Hi, good to be here. It's actually a warm, sunny winter's day. Usually cold, but not today.
Excellent. It's good to talk to you again, and it's lovely to have people with us from all parts of the world, from different continents, and it's great to talk to you. You were with us back in, I think it was 2006 or 2007, talking a little bit about your book, The Hidden Records, of course. But why don't we just do a little brief recap, Wayne, and this can serve as an introductory to our topic here today, which is primarily about the Jordanian codices. But give us a little background on The Hidden Records, Wayne.
Sure. My book, The Hidden Records, is basically looking at all the ancient monuments around the world, from Stonehenge, the pyramids, any ancient megalithic monuments around the world, seeing the commonalities with star worship, building big monuments, and many of them predominantly worshipping the area of the bull, the cosmic bull of Taurus, bull worship. And I tried to find out, what were the basic reasons for this. And the pattern started emerging with the star background of mine. I'm an amateur astronomer, seeing that the star was supposed to be our sun. In some cases it was a star, in some cases it was our sun. And realizing that two and the same, if you have a sun-like star, the ancients would refer to it with the same title, just that we have our one, our solar system, and then there's this other one out there in Taurus. They would be very confusing, and historians have called this whole thing sun worship, when it's actually sun-star worship of the gods, the visitors. And I found these star maps all around the world, starting in Egypt, looking at the 50 pyramid layouts, seeing the X that marks the spot was an obelisk that was in the middle, and looking at Stonehenge. Stonehenge has a whole lot of anomalies around it. The area closest across the valley is called Winterbourne Stoke. It had a whole group that matched some stars that are near this area, the Pleiades. And it worked from civilization to civilization. Almost every single one obsessed in the same stars, and that's in every continent all over the world. And I've put up all 23 star maps on the website to go and see them. It is thehiddenrecords.com. Just click the star maps list and you can see all 23. And while we're doing the interview, I'd like people to look at the images while we're talking, because they're very explicit, and you need to see the detail to get a belief in something. It just sounds too good to be true on a radio show, but when you see the historical images, people can make up their own minds.
Absolutely. We'll refer to the images and link up everything that we're going to run through here today. So why don't we talk about the backstory of the Jordanian codices then? This is something that went under my radar. You brought it to my attention recently when you contacted me, and this is a fascinating find that happened back in March, and it's been, as far as I've understood it, some debate back and forth whether this has been authentic books or not. And the last news that have been coming out now, of course, is that they are authentic. But give us the background story, Wayne.
Sure. It's actually many stories. So I'm going to tell you the one that I think sounds the most probable. It seems like some books were found in an old cave on the bank of the Jordan River in the northern part of Jordan, and it was something, I think, found by a Bedouin truck driver's family, maybe even further back than a few years ago. And they kept it in their family, and almost like an heirloom that they passed down. Might have been like 20 years, 30 years, if this is true. And they realized these things were valuable, these funny metal books made out of lead. They had weird inscriptions on them, and most of them were sealed. So what happened was a British researcher somehow got involved with this whole story, whether he was bumping into this chap by chance or heard about it or saw the images. I think, to cut a long story short, he started making it known and took some of them across the border to Israel to have scientists look at them there. And that was something where you shouldn't really take antiquities out of countries, take it across the border especially, if they are real. So there's a lot of backtracking stories here, but the general consensus were that these books might be as old as 2,000 years old. They have Christian stories on them, but there's some weird, almost paranormal-looking inscriptions and depictions. It's maybe the pictograph side that I'm going to be looking at, and they show a whole different side of Christianity. And what it appears with these funny-sized books, number one, why did they make them so small? It's because they wanted to conceal them on their person. It was a secret bit of teaching they wanted to keep private and hidden. They could bury these books in an area like a cave, and they last the test of time. Unlike a parchment, it would not rot, it would not perish. It's almost acid resistant from any kind of chemicals or long-term aging. So it seems to have been designed for something that can be carried forward, especially the sealed books. It fits the Revelations prophecies as well, that they have these sealed books that are going to open one day. And scientists started arguing between them. Then these copper books came in from nowhere, and some of them were duplicates of the lead books, and these were fakes. And sadly, because of these fakes being thrown in, whether it be the Bedouin truck driver or whether it be somebody else trying to make money out of these things, we have copper variations that they're not old. I mean, you can see the copper still has very little oxide on it. And because of that, what's happened with the theological societies around the world, they feel very emotionally threatened by these books because of the paranormal detail on them. I mean, this is really star maps and showing things in the sky that look like apparitions, crosses forming, etc. And it's a threat. It's something that is not fitting, so to speak, and they'd rather use the hoax side of the story to try and run them down and say that all are hoaxes because of this copper variety that have crept in.
Do we know rather where this copper, where it originated from? Was it from the same family or from elsewhere? Good
question. I would guess the same family. The Bedouin truck driver has them in a picture with himself, whereas the British guy, he refers mainly to the lead ones. And I heard his recent radio show suggesting just look at the lead books. And I totally agree with them, because the oxide that is on the lead is what's being dated. And there's a dating technique in science that uses lead, actually the lead material, and they can almost like use an isotope or something, I don't know how, or the residue that builds up on lead oxidizing is something that can be dated. And I checked on Wikipedia that if you look under age dating artifact lead, there is a process, and these processes are proving that these things are between the age of around about 1,800 years old or earlier. So that's pretty impressive.
Very, very impressive indeed. And so you mentioned that they were really small. What do we know about them, and how had they been made? Do you think the copper? Then, if we focus on the lead, if we focus on those.
Lead, yes. It could be a molding process, because lead has a very low melting point. So it could be some kind of a template, and then the lead is tipped into an inscribed flat little mold, so to speak, and then flattened out even more from behind it. Or it could be somehow almost like soldered onto it, because it looks like little bits added on top of a flat lead base. It would be like a soldering type process, or using an iron and building up these little, because they're raised. This is the weirdest thing. They're not indentations, they're actually raised sections that lift up. So I would say the molding aspect of it is probable. So making a copper reproduction is quite easy, and this is what happened with some of these copper ones. And while we're speaking of those copper ones, there are about 4 of them that are really big and have such different things on them, and those I think are total fabrications. Whereas one of them that I've got on my webpage, you see the only copper one, you can see there's a misprint where they've made a template and they actually slipped with the print. So they hammered it out, and I'm showing it because it's got detail that we need to show the public. That's the whole problem with these books. They're not showing anybody anything. They're locked up in 3 different places in the world, and are they ever going to release them?
Who has them at this point then, Wayne?
I think most of these collection of metal books are in the Jordanian University. They seem to have at least 60 of them. There are some others scattered around. There are a few other tests going on at the moment. The Royal Scientific Society is dealing with it in the US, and they are doing tests on it. There's a Mexican university as well, and I don't know how the University of Mexico's results are coming. It's the Getty Conservation Institute, and the Sheffield University is another one that's also doing tests. And so far, all those tests are showing an age of beyond 1,500 years old to up to 1,800 years old, and that's using, I believe, a lead dating technique.
Very, very interesting. How many books are there in total, do we know, and how many plates or pages do they, is in there?
Yeah, the average book varies from about 5 or 6 pages to single, just one, look like credit card size pieces that have really amazing information on, and then some of the bigger ones that are almost like book size, like a normal novel size. And that one, I've seen a couple around about 10, 15 pages of metal metal sheets, and they're all sealed with these binders with metal ringed insertions that have all oxidized in place that will be damaged if they open them. So when they open them one day, it is going to be obviously in the hands of a professional because it might damage them completely.
So in your estimate, how many plates or pages of these books have you seen so far, and have you gotten these images primarily from the web, or where do you go to find these?
Yeah, now this is the thing. It's an internet search. It was a heck of a difficulty trying to get the details from the people that had them to start with. They're not in contact with the public. Some of them have put them online, and those that have gone online, I've used them as references. And for the sake of interest in showing people what's on them, I've managed to get at least 9 or 10 of them, just single print, close detail image where you can see finer detail. And I think in the interest of letting people see them rather than cover them up, that's what I'm doing. And it's a bit of a risk, but I've thanked all the people involved and used them as a reference and sharpened up the images. It's important to adjust the contrast slightly and sharpen some of the images to see the detail.
That's right, because they're heavily oxidized, beginning to kind of rust in a way, so it's somewhat difficult to see, but you managed to do a good job, and on your page you do have quite a bit of what you found, obviously, but again, you don't know how much more actually is out there and what's on those plates, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's about 70 of these books, there's a wealth of information to go through, so we'll be lucky to see even a fraction of that.
So tell us what you found on the plates currently and how you tie it together with your work, obviously, Wayne.
Sure, I'd like to refer to the images on that page on my website, thehiddenrecords.com. Just click the metal books image, the montage of all the images, and that'll take you to the detail. I want to start with the most important one that seems to be a single credit card size plate on its own. Now, the plates that are on their own with lots of detail, to me, have the highest value of something secret. I think it was probably an early secret society of these people that maybe even started off the Templars, who can say? But on a single metal plate that's as small as a credit card that you can keep on your person and hide it, bury it somewhere, and you can dig it up another time. It's quite an amazing little bit of information that is durable. And the first one, the Daily News covered the story on this image. So it's the first image where it shows a menorah and 7 stars on it on my website, just underneath the animation of the stars that I believe are depicted. It's showing Orion to the Pleiades and that whole area of Taurus and Orion. And with 7 stars above the menorah, it's showing something that I proposed a few years ago, that the menorah in the Revelations book, the 7 candlesticks, the 7 golden candlesticks, are representation of the Pleiades. It's probably the easiest thing to do in the early days when people illuminated their homes with candles, to put a little grouping of 7, like the 7 celestial lights that they're celebrating on a beautiful candle stand. But these menorah candle stands have got markings in the actual stem, 3 blobs that are actually marking an Orion alignment, because Orion aligns on the horizon totally vertical, exactly like in this picture. So I'm comparing it to the stars of Orion. On this particular plate, there are 3 versions of the same story. The top part is just showing the menorah and 7 stars. The middle part is the interesting part. It's showing a little cluster, a group of 7 being illuminated and beams of light coming out of it. And then a little squiggly line that runs from it to a little round dot. And on that round dot has a line through the middle of it and a little dot added to it, like a planet being positioned around what I think is a sun-like star. And then beneath it, 3 stars in a row of Orion. So this middle portion of it, extracted, is showing Orion aligning to this, I believe it's the Bethlehem star. And then right at the bottom, it's got all the finer detail of the stars, with Orion, the leg of the bull, Canis Major, Aldebaran. There's a whole 3-portion analysis on one metal plate. And the Ra symbol is used. There's no written part on this small little plate. It's all pictographic. And this, to me, is the ground zero bit of information. It's speaking of a star secret that the biblical works has encrypted part of it, in that in the modern Bible today we have a fraction of the star map that's left, and it's in the Matthew text, and it speaks of the 3 magi that follow from the east. Now, Orion's belt rises perfectly vertical on the northern hemisphere, and it rises on the horizon. So they measure stars in ancient civilizations as being reborn or being sacred on the horizon, and it stands up vertical. If you follow up 33 degrees of arc, it'll put you right into the position where this little sun-like star is, and it's so tiny you need a telescope to see it. Our nearest sun-like stars are too small to be seen. They're magnitude 14, in particular with the most important one. So this story is almost identical to the Voynich manuscript. The Voynich manuscript I'm comparing to this one below it. I think 2 images down. There's a couple of others that have the detail. No, the Voynich manuscript, is above it. So if you just look above the little Orion animation, I've shown the plate that I believe is the Holy Grail. In the Voynich manuscript, there's one page that has a sacred cross filled in with stars, and it has a little Pleiades cluster and a little group like it, and the same little line that seems to show traveling from 7 stars to the one that's got the face on it. And they put like we do as children drawing the sun, we put a face in it. There seems to be a tradition that we do, we don't even think about, to personify like the ancients did, to personify a star with a face. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. And that Voynich manuscript does it exactly the same as the metal tablets. I'm comparing the two there.
So obviously there's a connection here right away, obviously, to the cross of Constantine, if you will, as well, the XP symbol. Yeah. Now, people
have really come down hard on me with this cross of Christ, the sacred cross of the churches, and me saying that it's the Orion stars. I'm lucky to have about 4 pieces of really good evidence now. If you look at the diagram just beneath the story, I'm showing the ancient alien picture. It looks like a butterfly and an arrow pointing from it to an astronaut with a helmet on. And this comes from Valcomona in Italy. It's over, I think they think it's 6,000 years old, but you can't really date these things, but it's really pre-Christian. That's all we can really say. And I'm comparing that star formation to Orion. And it's the X and the P. The pointer is the 3 stars, the Chi-Rho that Constantine and his army were looking up in the sky and witnessing. And that's how the biblical epic began, became put on the map by Emperor Constantine. And if you look at the manuscript that I've shown next to it, it shows the Lamb of Zion as on top of a mound, a heap. And I want to query, what is the heap that he's standing on? What is the Zion mound with the Lamb and holding a book? If you look at the stars in the sky on the manuscript, and then beneath it the cross showing that it's made up out of stars, I mean, this is the kind of evidence that we need. And then I think the biggest evidence to support this, I would want to use the sacred early Bible that they call the Parallel Bible, where it was done by a Masonic group about 300 years ago, between 300 years ago and I'd say as long ago as maybe just 120 years ago. There's a lot of the Freemason symbols on the front of it, and this Parallel Bible speaks of an alternative interpretation for the whole Bible. It gives the normal public text, and then a text next to it is what they believe is the alternative interpretation. Mm-hmm. And this alternative, go ahead.
Well, and this obviously is connected to the ideas of what you've decoded, I guess, as well in terms of the Masonic tracing boards and things like this, right? That there's a connection here in terms of the stars, in terms of these ancient symbols that not only seem to be connected with Christianity, but almost like I think you tied back to the Sol Invictus cult, and there seemed to be a relationship with older traditions as well there.
Yeah, what they did in Constantine's time, what Constantine did really was try and remold this Christ story into their old belief of the bull worship and the Sol Invictus, this blazing sun that rises, and make it more palatable. People accepting new religion will just see there's just slight variances from the old one. So it's been almost like made to fit, and the same basic story is encrypted now. And as it goes further forward into modern times, the star secret is encrypted in a way that only the initiate or a secret society would be able to decipher. Somebody who has the knowledge on special symbols can look at it and decipher it, and it's, I think, lost meaning. I would say even from the time of George Washington onwards, this whole star secret, even with the Freemasons, was completely buried, because I've done the historical research from the time of George Washington, and every single society believes that the blazing star, the Bethlehem star, is Sirius. Mm-hmm, they're going in the opposite direction from Orion, following the 3 alignments going backwards. And it needs to be in Taurus, if it fits the ancient civilizations.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about, there's been some dispute obviously here in terms of the symbols that are on the codices or the lead plates and so forth as well. I've heard from some, I read an article here as well. Some of the Jewish or rabbis, I think, have discredited this find now, but there seems to be more people who are interested in the New Testament. Christians have tried to validate it. There seems to be a little battle going on right there, Wayne. What's your take on this?
Yeah, and look, I can't blame them. When you are by traditional habit believing something that's emotionally important, and you have scholars that are tying their belief with the historical evidence, if you can call it, of the ancient Bible writings, the New Testament, Old Testament. And then when you see something new showing completely different interpretations to what we have in the modern versions, it is very upsetting. And of course, the first thing they want to look at is how can we prove that this is nonsense? And with these copper variations that have been thrown in, you'll see them focus on the copper evidence, the newer fake ones, and say, well, if these are fake, then surely all of them are fake. And it's something that they'll keep arguing about. But the scientists, I think, will have the right at the end of the day. I just hope that no secret society comes in and steals the whole lot or blocks the whole lot, or it just gets buried and they're missing. And this kind of thing happens with artifacts that are important. They just seem to go missing and hidden away in archives. So I just hope that these things get their chance.
That's right. Well, I have a looming suspicion that if there is something to this, which I do believe it is when we begin to look at it, I don't think we should at all discredit this. And now the finds are coming out that they are indeed as ancient as being, claimed. Then there could be some clues here, obviously. And the question is, what does this lead to, and who would potentially be interested in finding these things out, Wayne?
Yeah, the scholars are not interested in the pictoglyphic aspects because it's something that they can't make any sense out of. I'm very fortunate that my story with the star interpretations fit all these pictoglyphs, and that's where I'm probably had the background and the luck to make a little bit of sense out of it. But the Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek inscriptions on it are almost gibberish, and some of the scholars have said they almost speaking in a way that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And I've realized now that some of these symbols for the stars, like parts of the area around Sirius, they seem to use these letters as star constellations that match the Aramaic letters. So you've got to know what these symbols mean in a star context. And they've got little blobs on the end of the letters. If you just scroll down on my page, you'll see the Metal Book Library unearthed near the Face Monument in Sokot. I've got 2 metal books there. It shows most of it looks like Aramaic. But some of the letters have got little blobs on the end of the letters, and those, I think, are showing star formations that are in between as a hidden extra story amongst the written part. And the written part, I think, is made to be gibberish, but only the person knowing the codes that it's been written in can make sense of it. So it's definitely encoded. It's not normal writing.
Is there a single, coherent message that is coming through in the pictures that you've been looking at so far?
The written translations have shown absolutely nothing. But pictographically, if you look at the next one down, there's a picture of a menorah with a wreath at the bottom, and I think I want to just sort of clarify the 3 kings and compare it to a Roman coin that shows these star formations to validate Constantine's belief that the sacred cross is Orion. If you look at the picture where it's got a wreath and the menorah on my book, and I'm showing the stars that it seems to represent, the coin actually shows a fish formation in the sky with 7 dots in it. There's one of those symbols filled in with 7 blobs, 7 little dots in the shape, and it's a fish symbol, and it's in the sky, and below the horses on the horizon is the cross with 4 dots. There's Constantine's cross on the horizon, and the fish symbol showing the Pleiades in the sky. That's one leading and aligning to the other, and it's in correct orientation and everything. And if you look at the other side of the coin, they put 7 stars and a deity holding what looks like a Ra symbol, and the chair has 3 dots of Orion also on the horizon, showing that the actual belt star is part of it on the flip side of the coin, all on its own, hiding on the horizon, which is quite amazing.
Very interesting. So, do you want to run through the plates kind of more one by one, detailed,
yes.
or yeah?
I think I will, because the plate that follows that one We have the same menorah with wreath, but now remember I was saying that those letters could be star formations. Look between the wreath and the menorah. You will see the Aramaic symbols are very exaggerated dots on them. They seem to be shown in the context of the night sky. There's stars behind it, in front of it, and below it. We have some weird little comet things underneath it as well. They look like comets or tadpoles. You can call them what you like. But
yep.
We've been debating with this, and a Hungarian researcher actually suggested that these little dots are the apparition that forms from the cross that Constantine was taught with. It was some kind of apparition he saw in the sky to teach him about this whole thing, almost like an illuminated visual illuminated display teaching about Orion. And it's quite likely that, this is going to sound, this is the weird part, and when you see the plates that follow, something appears in the sky that can actually form shapes, almost like a hologram. And I personally believe that this is connected to a wormhole, and it's a plasma type effect in the sky that can actually become alive. And I think it's part of the creation. If ever there was a hand of God touching the earth, it's this kind of detail that seems to connect back to the creation. And the representation for the creation in this particular plate is that weird-shaped palm tree with fruit underneath it, usually shown with 7 fruits, representing the Pleiades attaching to this cosmic anomaly, and then the 2 important stars on each side of it. And this became a very important Christian symbol. But to make more sense of it, we just need more and more references to what we have and comparing one plate to the next. If you look at the plate that follows that one, we have that same cosmic tree again, and there's a group of these stars in between 5 columns. And it starts with 3 on its own, then there's a V shape with 5, then there's a grouping of 7, and then 1 with a circle around it and a line and a T. It looks like an ankh symbol. Now, if you look at the star formation that we're dealing with, it's the 3 belt stars of Orion, aligned with the 5, you go through the 5 of Taurus, and then we end up with the 7 of the Pleiades, and then it links to the 1, which is the position of this important star.
Okay, guys, so scroll down to Sealed Book. We're going to carry on and talk about it. It's a sealed book. It reveals Constantine's blazing cross and cosmic tree connection. Tell us about this plate then, Wayne.
Yeah, this is one book that is sealed, and that's what's so special about it. It has something in it that is very important, and the person that made it put these metal binders on it to be opened in the future. Now, on the front cover, what we have is a cross-shaped anomaly, but it has filaments running out of it, like it's a firework display, and very similar to the tree effect, the cosmic tree effect. And it seems to be, let's call it a filament. There's about 5 or 6 very etheric filaments coming out the top of it, and then this cross forms underneath. Now, when we first saw this plate, the detail was so sketchy. We thought, we've got no writing, we've only got this. It's surrounded with a couple of stars. So it is a sky depiction, and there's branches that seem to peep in from to the left-hand side that look like parts of the cosmic tree that are in the sky and illuminated, perhaps. And we didn't have much to go on other than this could be what Constantine was showing as a visual display, almost like a holographic teaching in the sky that he claims he and his army witnessed with angels and the whole thing. But the plate that follows it is the one that shows where it develops. It's almost like a part 2 version. It shows the same cross formation, but there's like fruit appearing on this cosmic tree. There's actually 3, 1 on the top and 2 on the beneath it, in a really strange shape. It looks like a pear. And this shape had us completely baffled for a while because, what does it mean? You've got these funny blobs appearing on it. And the more we went into the old church depictions and looked for evidence, and then I went back and looked at the Vatican from the sky and looked at the Monaco Palace, would you believe, from the sky, and the images that follow beneath it show the symbols that we're going to justify. You can look at the Vatican. The Vatican has a strange keyhole shape.
Yep.
If you look at the Palace of the Monaco, it has the Chiro, same those blazing lines, and then it has this weird keyhole shape again underneath. And the representation that it seems to speak of is something of the house of God. Now, I've debated this with a lot of people that are in the knowledge with symbols that I want to be named, because obviously I'm taking it off at a tangent and I'm not sticking to the norm. This is an unknown symbol, this keyhole symbol. And I'm going to show you where I found that elsewhere in the world. But just look to the left of this symbols diagram, there's another symbol. The symbol for the hand of God is what looks like a UFO with these filaments of discharge beneath it, and one of them shows almost like just like a flying helmet. The other one looks like a flying chestnut. And then they put the all-seeing eye in it. So this is the eye of the creation, which is a universal interpretation. The Freemasons use it as well to show the cosmic, they call it the divine architect, the creator or creation of all life and all living souls. And they've got this hand shape that is a combination developed from it. And the two symbols are very closely related and tied in with, I believe, the Ezekiel's wheel story.
That's right. I've heard referred to it as the Hamsa symbol.
Yes.
It comes out from the Arabic world. The Jews and the Christians are using it as well. So that's pretty interesting. And I haven't heard that particular interpretation on that symbol before. That it actually could be a UFO shape, if you will, too. Well, but the Ezekiel's wheel connection is made there as well, kind of looking like a keyhole. We have the Ahura Mazda, I think it is, who's coming out of the ring or the center as well of that.
Yes, standing in a disc that flies, very much like the Egyptian flying disc. They showed their disc flies, and their god Ra came out of it. And of course, the two serpents beneath it. And those serpents seem to be this cosmic tree filament. Remember the cosmic tree story in the Genesis reference? It speaks of Adam and Eve, first male and female, and there's this amazing cosmic tree in the background. But it seems to be pushed behind and being almost demonized, that the serpent is destructive and evil. That is part of the tree. That is one of these filaments from the tree. It looks like a plasma ribbon. If you ever see a plasma ball and look at these little streamers of electricity flowing through plasma ribbons, they look like little snakes, I'm sorry to say.
That's right.
It doesn't make them anything destructive or evil. They're actually part of this tree.
Yep.
And looking at the image below, trying to get more reasoning, I've shown the Lalibela shapes. Now, Lalibela has got the same keyhole type symbol and these similarities to Monaco and the Vatican.
That's in Ethiopia, isn't it?
Ethiopia, of course, and they put the sacred cross aligning with this symbol in the sky, usually vertical, or there's a couple of them, one pointing down. So this symbol is associated with the alignment of the cross. On the actual obelisks at Aksum, they have the dots filled in on the top of the keyhole, and it's stuck actually in the middle of this strange symbol. So where does it go from there? The detail I want to quickly show now is where everything is on a map, and this is new information that people haven't seen yet. It's something I've been holding back, and strangely enough, doing the show today, a few days ago, a friend of mine told me, hey, guess what? Somebody in America has found one of these crosses that are in the Israel area. It's a big cross geoglyph. It doesn't look like a settlement because if you look at the close-up detail on this map, it's a giant cross, a big X on the ground that marks the spot with a ring around it. And there's three of them. And this person found one of them, so I thought, okay, we've been holding on to this for a while. Let's release it. There's three of them that are in a row on the Israeli area, the northern part of Israel, near the Jordan River. And if you follow the alignment of these three, and it goes in the direction of the two big ones and to the small one, exactly like these three stars of Orion's belt, and follow those three, and going in the same aspect ratio of the Freemason map, the 33 degrees from Orion, guess where we land up?
Right
Temple
on
Mount.
Yeah, very interesting, huh?
I mean, what are the odds of that? And they're aligned pretty accurately. I mean, they're very tiny. They're enlarged here in this map. Obviously, they're not that size, but I've enlarged them to show the detail how the three are in alignment, and then compared it to that sacred cross that was found 6,000 years ago in Italy. It's the same kind of cross pattern that's drawn on the ground, isn't it?
Yeah. So how far apart are these three X's that is towards the Jordan River there?
It's quite I'm guessing offhand, at least between 10 and 15 kilometers between them. Even more, perhaps even 30 kilometers between them. And they're very small. They're about 200 feet wide, the small one.
Yeah.
And the bigger one's about 350 feet wide. And the person that I was in touch with in the antiquities of the Jordanian University said, look, we don't like to talk about these things because we can't give you answers on them. It's like this mound that I'm looking at, the Deir Allah mound. It's a big mound that's 10,000 years old, or they call it Bronze Age, but there's no real meaning behind it. They don't know what it is. Now, these crosses have got the same thing. They said there might be settlement ruins. But if you look at these four walls that make the cross, there's no gates, there's no anything. It's illogical. And it's a geoglyph. It's made to be viewed from the sky.
So I don't know if you've zoomed in to this with Google Earth or similar software, but what do you think that the cross and those rings are composed of? Is it stone or is it carvings in the ground? How is it made, do you think?
Yes, they actually piled stones, like a stone wall. So it's lots of little stone walls and covered with dust and dirt, and you only find the stones underneath it by digging.
Mm-hmm.
So the amazing thing is these are all in one area, where this face monument is like on Mars, where the metal books cave is found. It's all in the same area, this little forgotten part of the biblical story of Jacob. Remember, Jacob is the founder of Israel, and what led me to this whole story was getting hold of that old Bible, the parallel Bible we were talking about early on.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I wanted to do was go through the Jacob story, because it goes through Jacob's ladder, and in the Freemason star map it shows you this cosmic ladder going forward up into the heavens, where there's a hand of God. Remember, now we have that hand of God, makes a bit more sense now with the hamster symbol. Right next to this star is blazing with 7 rays coming from it. And the reasoning I was looking for was, where does it say star map in the parallel Bible? Is it going to give me more detail? But what it did give me was a finite detail of where Jacob actually wrestled with an angel that gave him this information. I think the word wrestle is a misinterpretation. It's probably dealt with the angel.
Mm-hmm.
And the detail he speaks of is this place of a face of God. It had a place of the face of God. And this reference, that the way it's written and translated in this old parallel Bible, from a Masonic source it appears, I've shown pictures of it, which I'll make available to you. It seems to be in an area, according to them, the writing, that it's near a place called Succoth, Succoth, and it's on the Jordanian side of the Jordan River, on the banks. So what did I do? I went to an old map, looked for where Succoth was, and found where it was, went onto Google Earth, found it on Google Earth, tracked a bit towards the river, and it was just there. It just hit me in my face. There is this face looking back at me. I tell you what, if you ever want to see hair stand up on your arm, it's when you're looking for something that you think is so hard to imagine, another Mars face anomaly, and finding it on the borders of which is I see more Israel than Jordan, because there wasn't really borders in the old days. I mean, Jacob founded Israel. This is still his area, his territory. And there's this face monument. It's made of predominantly rubble, and they refer to it as a heap as well in this text.
Now, okay, let's clarify that just slightly more here. So we're talking about, if we stick to the same image here, where we can see the 3 crosses clearly in the alignment of the 3 belt stars of Orion, then slightly down from that, under the Jordan River, to the left of the Metal Books cave, there is where that face is, you're saying?
Absolutely. Now, the reason it's important to know that the Metal Books cave is somewhere in this northern area, nobody knows exactly where it is except the people that have made the claim, and they're not going to say exactly where it is. It's in a valley somewhere near the northern part of Jordan, and by the Jordan River bank. It's closer to the river, and it has water damage, so it can't be anywhere other than near the Jordan River. So the question is, what is the connection between this face picture monument and the metal book? And there's one metal book that actually shows the face on it, which we can work our way down to, but we need to know more to reason it. And in the star map, I just wanted to show a few things. I've shown the Key of Solomon, how Orion is actually the star formation on something that Dan Brown is going to be taking in a very big direction just now. The Key of Solomon is proving that the strange cross of the churches is Orion, and it shows the way to the Star of David. Now, the whole Hebrew Star of David thing is coming into contention, equaling the Star of Bethlehem, being this one and the same thing. And that is a story for another day. The whole Solomon Key cipher, it's a little cipher puzzle that you can put together by putting these pieces of these constellations together, and it makes up a puzzle showing everything. I've made a video for that. That's really complex.
You have, obviously, the sister website, so to speak, is keyofsolomon.net, where people can go and read about this more. Click
that picture and you can take it from there. That'll be, if you want to go in that direction, or just carry on with the story. I've shown the animation again beneath it, just to show so people can see how these stars, how you use the Orion constellation as a cosmic pointer. Looking at the plate beneath it, this is the copper plate now. This is a fake metal plate. You can see there's no oxide on it. It's that pinkish color, and it's got detail on it that I put here because it's a copy of a lead book that I haven't got an image of. So I'm using it purely for showing what detail is on there, and that's all that counts. This is a fake artifact that is duplicating a real one, and there's a misprint area part where the template actually slipped. So what we have here are pyramids. Pyramids and the cosmic tree upside down, now showing that it comes from the heavens. And this is kind of giving a detailed clue as to what goes on in the pyramids. It seems to be a cosmic connection. These chambers inside the pyramids connect with this celestial energy, power, light, ethic ribbons of whatever you want to call it, but it seems to all come from the sky, that there is some kind of cosmic force. It comes down in this tree-like shape, probably invisible, I think. This is a way of showing it. If it were visible, it would look like that. I have a belief that maybe there'll be a time in the future where something like this will be visible, that Constantine really did see the hand of God coming down from the sky, the hand of creation, this thing illuminating at a special time when we're ready for it. So that is just a personal belief.
Wayne, there is this whole theory being worked out with one of the guys who's working together with the Electric Universe, Wallace Thornhill and David Talbot. His name is Rens van der Sluis. We had him on the show a couple of years ago now, and he has this whole idea about the Axis Mundi, the world tree, actually being plasma discharge, that this actually was a visible phenomena in the ancient world, and that makes sense if we tie these things together, actually.
Fantastic. I've got a website that's been trying to explain that all along. I mean, we haven't covered on this show my own experience. I'm very fortunate to have had a near-death experience, had the proverbial down the tunnel of light, and got to the other side and was allowed to interact for some reason, whether it was me asking questions or I was just a lucky guy there at the right time, and my spirit interacted and was allowed to interact with this cosmic tree, and it challenged me. It said, what are you going to do different now that you've understood the questions that I asked? At least 3 questions. The first one was, who are we and where do we come from? And that was one download of, you can't imagine, of detail, finding all these star maps. This was all given to me, and I'll say it right now. It isn't because I'm a great scholastic type researcher. This stuff, if you're given the answers to an exam and go sit that exam and then write the exam having the answers, how hard is that? And this is what it is for me, finding all these ancient star maps around the world. I knew what I was looking for. I just had to find proof of it. Now, this cosmic tree is what we're looking at here in these metal books. And the detail of it being plasma ribbons, I put on my website and was about 2005, I think I launched it. I'm glad to see other people now are sharing that information from their own findings and spreading it as well. And we're all saying the same thing. It's going to be more and more evidence of this. And I think there's going to be a time next year that we're going to actually visually see something in the sky. But we've got to be very, very careful, because I'm quite sure there's a very good chance that our elite of this world don't want this to happen, and they're trying to make a false event using their own hologram. It's called the Project Blue Book, to try and make it cross in the sky. Yeah. They've seen one in Russia already that had feed-in lights from 2 angles, and they had this big cross formation like it was being tested, and that's on the internet. So it's quite likely this sort of thing is going to be a false flag event as well. So we need to know what is real and what is not. And I think the question comes down to which is more advanced looking and has a pure human uplifting story attached to it. One will not. One will tell you to step into the blue beam and come and join us and we'll take you away. No aliens are ever going to take humanity away.
Right.
So that's all you have to keep in mind is, keep looking for information to how we can develop ourselves on Earth. Because this is a big planet here, it's not going to go to waste. I think it's a very good chance we're going to get information as to how we can uplift the whole of humanity. And that's a big thing that I have a whole different website for, oneism.org, oneism.org, where I show basically what I was shown. And I've drawn images to try and depict this cosmic tree and the details of it, and showing how all ancient civilizations called it different things. For the Eastern Hindus, it was Shiva with many arms standing on top of a mountain. For the Hebrews and part of our Old Testament, it was a tree of light. For the Egyptians, it was a pillar with rings around it. This is also part of it that's up close. You'll see there's rings around it. Every different civilization had this axis mundi, pillar of God, so to speak. And what's the deal if it's not a man? We've tried to make it a man, and I think it's quite obvious it's a man's world in the ancient times, and a woman had very little part to play. And of course, it would be a Caucasian man in that part of the world if it was Hebrew. And he would be bearded and sitting in a golden chair in the clouds, and that just doesn't fit. I'm sorry, that is personification again of something that is way more advanced, something that every human soul is connected to. And this is the thing, every culture has this secret. And they try to make it look different. Why? Because they wanted to fight each other and go to war and have the excuse of the people across the border, they are heathen, just go kill them and murder and rape and take their gold.
Right.
And that's going on today in a different way, and they're calling it business. So
that's right.
Have we really progressed? You know, that's the big.
Well, that's why that's why I find it interesting as well, because obviously a lot of the books from the Old Testament and the New Testament have been carefully chosen and again from different councils of the Roman Catholic Church. Things have been excluded and all of this, and this might be yet another find that upsets things, if you know what I mean, in terms of like the quality of Book of Enoch and Gospel of Thomas and all these other apocryphal texts. Basically, that's why it might also be the reason why certain people who wanted to get their hands on this stuff and obviously right away kind of muddied the water with these fake other the copper plates basically.
Yeah. The fake plates, absolutely, and I think it's worth looking at the next image shows of the book that has a lot of oxide on it. It's another sealed book. This one has a blazing face on it, and some people said it was Christ and it was the thorns. If you look at the detail of this face, it has more like flames, and you can see the areas. It's more flame-like than thorn-like. And the bottom part of the face is squared off. It's got a bit like a square chin, very much like the Sphinx face. And these sun gods of the Inca, Maya, Aztec, they all seem to have the same kind of cosmic deity face for the ancestors. Now, compared to Helios, for the argument's sake in the image, Helios, again, has the 7 blazing lights from the head. The Statue of Liberty has followed that Helios tradition of a solar deity. And that face, I'm pretty sure, is the Deir Allah face. And if you look carefully on the forehead, there's a little triangle. It looks a bit displaced because I think it's poorly put together. This is probably a book copy of another copy, and they're not very neat. You can see the writing on them. It's all squiggledy, and there's no straight lines, and it's just trying to carefully put information on it that you can just make sense of. Call it like a glorified sketch pad. And these details are a little bit crooked. So above the nose is this weird-looking triangle. The eyes are another clue. If you look at the one eye compared to the other, one is a very slight dotted outline, and the other one is raised forward. Now, if you look at the Deir Allah monument, this monument on the edge of the Israel border that's a human face-like, like the Mars face, it has only one eye as well. The other eye is missing, exactly like we have on Mars. There's one eye and the other one is damaged. They've almost made the Earth one in the ruined condition like the Mars, the original one.
One eye open, huh? That's interesting.
Well, I don't know. I think it's damaged. I think Mars was destroyed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's showing how the ruin looks on Mars, and they're building that a copy of that damaged ruin because it was sacred. They didn't want to build a new one from scratch. I just find it very amazing that they both have the same one eye damaged, and you can just see the slight remains of the eye socket. So, what are the odds of that? I think it's showing the importance of the original Mars anomaly, and act like as if they knew about Mars was destroyed. It's quite probable the old books and lost records of the story of our ancestors and the planet Mars.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, let's continue to scroll down, Wayne.
Yeah. The detail that I wanted to show were obviously thinking of the Christ face, the secret of the cross and the Son of Man, and the usage of the word the Son of Man, S-U-N of man. The story of the Christ. Would it be so bad if he's tied in with a star secret? Would it be so bad that his story that he was trying to tell makes everybody equal and humans sacred? And this is what I think has been removed from Christianity. So my question is he going to be returning? Because the Revelation prophecy believes he will, the second coming.
All right.
So we have to wait and see for that one.
Yeah, that's right. And then next image, it's you holding two other plates. Tell us about that image.
What I'm trying to, this is actually a wooden book. Now, I wanted to put it there because these came up a few years ago, long before the metal plates showed their faces. A friend of mine in Zambia, Marcus Matthew, wrote a book on the Chokwe tribe, and he was showing what their tribes were reproducing every 100 years. These books perish because they do circumcision ceremonies with them, and they're really brought out and used hard with ceremony. So a book doesn't last too long. They crack and they break, and This is one that broke, and there's been another one made since then.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the detail on this. It shows 7 stars. There's that little journey from those 7 stars, again, coming down to the primordial mound. On the right-hand side, it uses an arrow to teach the way. Now, I'm comparing this arrow to a lot of the other wooden books, and the wooden books use the same kind of teaching technology, same theme, same story, and same symbols in most cases. It has sacred cross and everything on it as well. And there's 3 stars in a row above one very important star. It's showing the direction to this importance of the star of the Chokwi. Now, the Chokwi say their ancestors were teaching of their place in the sky. So I just wanted to throw that in because it is a similar type book.
Interesting. And then let's see, you tie in Jacob a bit here as well, and it seems.
Yes.
Do you think that the archetypal story of Jacob's ladder, his dream that he had, that's what we're basically talking about here? It's a ladder into reaching into space, and there's a story there in the Bible, obviously, about what he saw, and there was also kind of as far as I've heard the story anyway, I can't recall the exact biblical passages now, but it's a reference to the craziness that he saw in his dream, right? It's a kind of a madness up there, you know.
Well, you're referring to the new version. The new version speaks of it as a dream. The older versions speak of a vision, and then if you go back even further, he speaks that it was real, and he had to build literal heaps on the ground to mark these what he was shown.
Yeah.
Let's stick to the vision analogy because I think it still makes it's good enough for me if we just take the more modern interpretation. And he was wrestling with this angel, and the angel gave him the information. Wrestling could be in the vision. He was wrestling with the thoughts. Who can say? But let's take it as a vision. And he was shown on the ground, as above, so below, that he would mark things on the ground that mirrored the sky. Now, in these star maps, like, for example, the Mars star map, it uses the face monument. It's identical looking to the Israel one, Jordanian, actually I should say more Jordanian than Israeli.
That's right.
That it is a duplicate of it. It's part of a star map with the Pleiades on the Mars scenario, and that's probably my most accurate star map. So these teachings and the name of this monument that has got scholars thinking it's just a mysterious Bronze Age monument. It has a name, and the name actually is quite amazing on its own. It's called Deir Allah. Deiralla. Obviously, the Islamic name for God is Allah with an H at the end. It comes from a very ancient spoken word that is probably older than before let's say before we thought we were civilized. In the ancient times, a lot of the languages had similar pronunciations for the same thing, because these teachers that were coming down were probably doing their rounds and using the same names. That's just a point of probability.
Mm-hmm.
And the Deir part means temple and truth. Deir Allah, temple of truth, is the more accepted name of it. But if you look at the Deir name, it's also used in Egypt as well for other details and the beginnings of the Egyptian pyramids in reference to this primordial mound. Now, this primordial mound might be a man-made mound, like this monument, like the Mars monument, and like any other, let's call it a tomb, which I don't like to use, a large man-made object on the ground where it had a chamber inside it, and kings thought this is a very nice place for me to be buried, and it got accepted as a tomb through historians. This could be the mound that was actually made to mark the spot of the first landing for these civilizations. So it's just an idea as to what that mound might mean, and using the name, this Temple of Truth, and these records that were at this mound. Now, if you ask the scholars what is the most important thing they found with this monument, I'll tell you one story and one story alone. There's a ruin on the top of it. They built something on top of it when it was completely eroded and forgot its meaning. And they found some old parchments that used the word Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
And this record of Elohim goes against every other record of the usage of the word Elohim. It's older, and they believe that it uses it as a plural word. Now, if you go back to early Hebrew, Elo and Him is two symbols. Eloi is people, and Him is from the heavens. I might have it the other way around there because it goes back, and there's a lot of debate about it. But the simplicity is it's people, not person. In reference to people that came from the sky. It's very likely we're not dealing with God. It's very likely we're dealing with an angelic intervention teachers, visitors, aliens, call them what you like. But I think this reference to these mounds and this word Elohim. Now, this word is true, and that it's people that came from the heavens. You need to go back to the Old Testament and reread everything again, and where it speaks the word God, imagine teachers from the sky. And that's what it really comes down to. I think you still have great teachings, but is it a bad thing that God stays in one place? And everything that happened on our earth is from messengers and beings teaching about it.
There's another reference, by the way, as far as I've read about on the lead scrolls or books here. One record said there is a cross in the foreground, and behind it is what appears to be the tomb, and then in parentheses of Jesus. But that's just the interpretation. A small building with an opening, and behind that, the walls of the city. There are walls depicted on other pages of these books too, and they almost certainly refer to Jerusalem. Again, that's just interpretation. We have no idea of that. But the tomb aspect there I found interesting, if it has something to do with this face here as well, and the tomb style thing you mentioned. I don't know, Wayne. What do you think?
It's hard to say. I would still say the simplicity of it is just X marks the spot, an important mound reference with this, especially this Deir Allah face on Mars type depiction.
Yeah.
It's representation of a face, human, this maybe with a hair and beard around it to show that it's moving in wisps and like a sun, a reference of a sun god, sun visitor that teaches about sun, stars. There's nothing really bad here. It's just simply history about star astronomy and our ancestors being tied in with astronomy.
Do you think the story here that is trying to be told in one way is, well, to me as I'm listening, it seems to depict some kind of event with this, the plasma, the tree of, the axis mundi is kind of, even the idea that it's upside down might indicate that there was, well, things are upside down, right? Something happened in one sense. And also at the same time then, we might be looking at some kind of almost contact event and or somebody having furtherance of these visions in the style of Jacob and his dream, if you will. What do you think?
I think we've found these books at a very an interesting time. What's come to light an interesting time, not by chance, that it's almost like destined. And
right.
These are books that are sealed like Revelations. I think it's very likely that if you look at the rest of the Revelation story, when each book seal is opened and the information extracted from it, it tells a story about what's going on, and at a time, I think 2012, that the Maya said was an end of an era, and it'll be replaced by another. In our Revelation story, we have the chance of the New Jerusalem. And remember, the word Jerusalem it's just a reference to a city that was their big city. This is a Jerusalem in the sky. So forget the name associated with it. It's just another city, another place, another beginning. And this whether it be referring to our ties with the Eden artificial place around this cosmic tree as being this city, or we're building this new city on the ground, a new civilization, the golden 1,000 years of a golden era. I think it gives us hope, and I think it's a very good chance because of the way the economy is going, the way humanity is going, the uprising in tension, the uprising in struggle to just earn a living, the cost of living, everybody now in suffering and in struggle. It's quite likely the creation that is connected to all these souls will not let this go on, and it's reaching a point now where it's unacceptable, the amount of abused humanity by our rich elite superpowers that be. I just refer to them as the elite.
Yep.
Keep them nameless for now. And I think it's time that there has to be a change because there's too many souls suffering for it, and it's just not allowed. It's a universal law to intervene and help. And I think the way of intervening is going to be an official contact. I think we can expect it, first of all, watching it on TV one night. You're going to be looking at TV, and your channel's going to change, and you're going to see something very unique, and a spokesperson saying that it's a signal that's overriding the existing TV stations or satellite or whatever it is, and the world will get to see through media. And I think that's where the first clues are going to come in. And then the second part, I think, is going to be we're going to see them in the sky. But the warning that I believe is going to come with this, and this is now from my own experience in a vision, and also with this cosmic tree event. I'm not sure if it was fed into my mind at my near-death experience, or I got it through meditation later on, is that our Earth elite, have got a way of making an extraterrestrial contact avoided. They've found a way to chase them away. Now, who would think that our technology and our ego, we could chase away cosmic visitors? is a very simple way to do it. And I use the word THD, threat of collateral damage. Collateral damage being like you've seen with the WikiLeaks exposures, where they go in and civilians are caught up in the crossfire, 60,000 of them, let's just mention a number. But WikiLeaks have shown the collateral damage of humanity to our powers that be that run our world. Human lives obviously have no value. And I think it's a simple threat that was made by our elite, whether it be 100 years ago, be now, or just known amongst elite protocol. And if these aliens exist, they probably can hear all our communications, being all the elite communicating. And they would have heard that if one comes, the protocol is not only to shoot them down. That's always been the old protocol in every single country. Shoot them down because they could be a threat. But it's one further. Shoot them down and use a weapon that would actually make almost like a nuclear type blast that will be unknown from where it comes from, and it'll look like the UFO is attacking us. That's a huge thing.
Right.
These people come and show themselves, and they detonate a super weapon below it. They're going to say, our elite, or news bulletins are going to say, this UFO is attacking us. We need to shoot it. And these are evil. They're terrible. And, it's something that can be set up like that. Now, if advanced beings around the cosmos care about human lives, they will not want to come because it'll cost human lives with this ridiculous protocol that they have on Earth, and that they can do something like that and make it look like a false flag that the aliens are attacking us. I think this is the control that they've had, and this is why we've had nothing official. And the contacts that have been made have been with private people in secrecy because they are scared of being shot out of the sky, number one. Number two, it can't be official because human lives will be the price of doing such a thing. So that's just an opinion. I think we're going to see something happen next year, and we're reaching a point, even if it's not next year, it might be the following year. I believe the Mayans used that date because it's a cosmic date that's very close to the period, and it's one that marks centuries and thousands of years. It stands out as a cosmic time measurement that is close to 2012. So I don't think it's going to be exactly December 2012. I think it might be even 2013, but it's near this cosmic alignment time measurement point, which is a very neat, almost landmark of space measuring time in records.
Very interesting. I think it's going to be a mayhem in terms of information and possible things that are going to be played out. Potentially, we've seen some of these things happening in movies, if you will, as well. It's almost like the Battle of Los Angeles was a recent one, which really showed an interesting idea that there is no questions asked, and all of a sudden it's just a war with aliens, although nobody knows what the heck is going on. No questions are asked. It's like
Independence Day. What was it? Aliens, bad aliens. If they wanted to come take us out, they would have done it long ago. And all they would have done is come down and release some kind of weird disease where humanity just drops dead and they just take over, and it hasn't happened.
I understand that reason of that argument point, but at the same time, we don't know. They might have just shown up. They might just have discovered us for all we know.
You know what?
So
I would agree with that if we didn't have all this stuff in history and all these recent contacts and really good footage of things happening in the last 300 years.
That's true. If we're talking about the same group, Wayne, or same people.
I don't think it's the same group. I think it's anything that's out there or in contact with each other, so they all know the Earth story. I think it must be some kind of an expected ethic that when you reach that level of star travel, you get to know who else is in there in the map that you're traveling in the stars, and what people are you're going to come across in your travels, and what their stories and rules and ethics are. And I think it's quite likely they all know the Earth story, and it's quite sad that we're in a situation with all the suffering, and it's got to a point now that something has to happen, and maybe it'll be somebody on Earth that is empowered to do this whole thing. Maybe the Christos, the second Christ, somebody already walking on this earth that's born here and has the right to do it because, like the Christ story, he was actually born on this earth, that has the universal right to do something about it, but this guy will be helped. And he has a good chance of that.
Absolutely. And I hope that it's the spirit of truth that will manifest in a multitude of individuals, and just not, so again, we're back to that idea of projecting it onto the one man or the one face, you know what I mean?
Yes, it might be many. That would be fantastic. Imagine if it's somebody in Iraq or Iran, somebody in India. That would be fantastic. There's a woman, one of the contactees, Betty Anderson's daughter, Becky Anderson. She had a vision that showed different animals that are important for different countries, like the elephant of India, the camel of Iraq and Iran and the Arabian regions, all uniting with connection to these visitors from above. But the visitors, in this case, we're referring to the cherubim type, the gray aliens that watch over all life, that might even be them. And this is another story that we'll do in the second story that you want to do, the second interview, looking at all the messages of this story through a Templar secret going to Freemason secret, and a priory that has a fresco that tells the whole story about the secret Bible, and it shows a picture of God with the cherubim, and God being human form, and he's being helped. He is in collusion with the gray entities. And that part to me just sells the whole thing. The Greys are the big kahunas. They're the domineering highest of archangels, if you want to call them, of the universe. And they are the ones that evolved the furthest and watch over the cosmic tree.
All right, we'll continue obviously talking more about that. There's one more thing I want to just mention. I think one thing that we can say for sure, whatever is going to happen, is that we're not going to get the correct story from the elite powers in that sense. People need to be pay close attention to what we're going to be told if something like this happens, because I think, as you rightly said, Wayne, it's more probably it's going to be some kind of false, flag event or what have you. But we'll just have to see.
We have to watch and hold thumbs, but I think every single person needs to watch and use the initiative to see if it's pure, see if it's a human uplifting for everybody. If you see something where there's people from above that are saying, you need to do this, you need to do a whole lot of things that are extra work, pain, suffering, reject it. If you see a triangular craft in the sky, run. That's not one of ours. I think there's a very good chance there's technology that have gone way beyond the stealth technology. They've got one that I think will look like a UFO. So if you see a triangular shaped aircraft, that's not the real deal. That's something you need to watch out for.
Let's talk a little bit about your website and some of the more companion material that you have available. Obviously, thehiddenrecords.com, that's the main website, and also you have the book out called The Hidden Records.
Yes.
And it's, let's see, was there a several part, or is it just the one book, Wayne? Remind me again.
You know what? It's got a book 2 and a book 3 waiting, and from all the trouble that I've had in the United States with going through 3 different distribution agencies, that I had to get my books there. They start marketing with them, and there's some weird things happen. They don't pay me. They don't deliver to Amazon. And in the end of the day, I have to close it down and move my books. And I've done this 3 times. And the last one was the absolute straw that broke the camel's back. Would you believe the guy that had my book, for some reason, logged it down with Amazon that he was the copyright holder. The guy then dies, and now my book is stuck. It's stuck in the United States. It's trapped. It's now being contested for copyright. It's and I can't do anything with Amazon. So unless I physically go there and sort it out, I'm pretty much stuck on that. So what I'm doing now is I'm supplying from England to anywhere in the United States at the same price. So I'm running at a loss, but but we've got all these books that we need to get out there. So it's costing me doing what I'm doing right now, and my investors are just sort of shaking their heads and saying, just don't give up, but for goodness sakes, try and turn it around. And I think I'm waiting for this miracle next year that maybe people will see all these things make sense. And then we've got a lot of stock sitting all over the world. We can go and get them and use them and get them into bookstores again. So for now, in your part of the world, in Europe as well, the British supplier is doing very well for now.
Okay, but the easiest way to get a copy of your book is just simply through your website, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Just take it from there, or yes, I think just go to my website, because it'll take you from whatever country you're in, put you onto the best option. Okay,
and then we have obviously keyofsolomon.net for more on the side store that we briefly mentioned, and then oneism.org as well, and that's a whole story we should, maybe we can save that for another time, Wayne. That's an interesting one, and I haven't heard about that. It's a big subject, obviously. Yeah, it's me setting out to prove this cosmic tree is real, that it's a place that's probably the middle of the universe. There's a bit more evidence showing that this one might be a relay station. It might be just near our galaxy, but it all ties to this cosmic core of everything, of all life from the Big Bang. And that detail is in every single foundation. They have this cosmic tree story, and I've got at least, I'd say about 25 very good examples around the world that give extra detail that matches not just my experience, but another person who wants to remain out of the picture for now, because the Greys have told her not to intervene, but I'm going to bring this person in later.
that documented the whole book and what this place looks like. And I was so emotionally upset that they didn't want to include as a reference that I could show that their event was real. They've been told to wait. It's probably not safe to come out now, but that might be next year. Let's just hold thumbs that their story comes out with this one as well. And hi, good to be here. It's actually a warm, sunny winter's day. Usually cold, but not today.
Excellent. It's good to talk to you again, and it's lovely to have people with us from all parts of the world, from different continents, and it's great to talk to you. You were with us back in, I think it was 2006 or 2007, talking a little bit about your book, The Hidden Records, of course. But why don't we just do a little brief recap, Wayne, and this can serve as an introductory to our topic here today, which is primarily about the Jordanian codices. But give us a little background on the Hidden Records, Wayne.
Sure. My book, The Hidden Records, is basically looking at all the ancient monuments around the world, from Stonehenge, the pyramids, any ancient megalithic monuments around the world, seeing the commonalities with star worship, building big monuments, and many of them predominantly worshipping the area of the bull, the cosmic bull of Taurus, bull worship. And I tried to find out, what were the basic reasons for this. And the pattern started emerging with the star background of mine. I'm an amateur astronomer, seeing that the star was supposed to be our sun. In some cases it was a star, in some cases it was our sun. And realizing that two and the same, if you have a sun-like star, the ancients would refer to it with the same title, just that we have our one, our solar system, and then there's this other one out there in Taurus. They would be very confusing, and historians have called this whole thing sun worship, when it's actually sun-star worship of the gods, the visitors. And I found these star maps all around the world, starting in Egypt, looking at the 50 pyramid layouts, seeing the X that marks the spot was an obelisk that was in the middle, and looking at Stonehenge. Stonehenge has a whole lot of anomalies around it. The area closest across the valley is called Winterbourne Stoke. It had a whole group that matched some stars that are near this area, the Pleiades. And it worked from civilization to civilization, almost every single one obsessed in the same stars, and that's in every continent all over the world. And I've put up all 23 star maps on the website to go and see them. It is thehiddenrecords.com. Just click the star maps list and you can see all 23. And while we're doing the interview, I'd like people to look at the images while we're talking, because they're very explicit, and you need to see the detail to get a belief in something. It just sounds too good to be true on a radio show, but when you see the historical images, people can make up their own minds.
Absolutely. We'll refer to the images and link up everything that we're going to run through here today. So why don't we talk about the backstory of the Jordanian codices then? This is something that went under my radar. You brought it to my attention recently when you contacted me, and this is a fascinating find that happened back in March, and it's been, as far as I've understood it, some debate back and forth whether this has been authentic books or not. And the last news that have been coming out now, of course, is that they are authentic. But give us the background story, Wayne.
Sure. It's actually many stories. So I'm going to tell you the one that I think sounds the most probable. It seems like some books were found in an old cave on the bank of the Jordan River in the northern part of Jordan, and it was something, I think, found by a Bedouin truck driver's family, maybe even further back than a few years ago. And they kept it in their family, and almost like an heirloom that they passed down. Might have been like 20 years, 30 years, if this is true. And they realized these things were valuable, these funny metal books made out of lead. They had weird inscriptions on them, and most of them were sealed. So what happened was a British researcher somehow got involved with this whole story, whether he was bumping into this chap by chance or heard about it or saw the images. I think, to cut a long story short, he started making it known and took some of them across the border to Israel to have scientists look at them there. And that was something where you shouldn't really take antiquities out of countries, take it across the border especially, if they are real. So there's a lot of backtracking stories here, but the general consensus were that these books might be as old as 2,000 years old. They have Christian stories on them, but there's some weird, almost paranormal-looking inscriptions and depictions. It's maybe the pictograph side that I'm going to be looking at, and they show a whole different side of Christianity. And what it appears with these funny-sized books, number one, why did they make them so small? It's because they wanted to conceal them on their person. It was a secret bit of teaching they wanted to keep private and hidden. They could bury these books in an area like a cave, and they last the test of time. Unlike a parchment, it would not rot, it would not perish. It's almost acid resistant from any kind of chemicals or long-term aging. So it seems to have been designed for something that can be carried forward, especially the sealed books. It fits the Revelations prophecies as well, that they have these sealed books that are going to open one day. And scientists started arguing between them. Then these copper books came in from nowhere, and some of them were duplicates of the lead books, and these were fakes. And sadly, because of these fakes being thrown in, whether it be the Bedouin truck driver or whether it be somebody else trying to make money out of these things, we have copper variations that they're not old. I mean, you can see the copper still has very little oxide on it. And because of that, what's happened with the theological societies around the world, they feel very emotionally threatened by these books because of the paranormal detail on them. I mean, this is really star maps and showing things in the sky that look like apparitions, crosses forming, etc. And it's a threat. It's something that is not fitting, so to speak, and they'd rather use the hoax side of the story to try and run them down and say that all are hoaxes because of this copper variety that has crept in.
Do we know rather where this copper, where it originated from? Was it from the same family or from elsewhere? Good
question. I would guess the same family. The Bedouin truck driver has them in a picture with himself, whereas the British guy, he refers mainly to the lead ones. And I heard his recent radio show suggesting just look at the lead books. And I totally agree with them, because the oxide that is on the lead is what's being dated. And there's a dating technique in science that uses lead, actually the lead material, and they can almost like use an isotope or something, I don't know how, or the residue that builds up on lead oxidizing is something that can be dated. And I checked it on Wikipedia. If you look under age dating artifact lead, there is a process, and these processes are proving that these things are between the age of around about 1,800 years old or earlier. So that's pretty impressive.
Very, very impressive indeed. And so you mentioned that they were really small. What do we know about them, and how had they been made? Do you think the copper? Then, if we focus on the lead, if we focus on those.
Lead, yes. It could be a molding process, because lead has a very low melting point. So it could be some kind of a template, and then the lead is tipped into an inscribed flat little mold, so to speak, and then flattened out even more from behind it. Or it could be somehow almost like soldered onto it, because it looks like little bits added on top of a flat lead base. It would be like a soldering type process, or using an iron and building up these little, because they're raised. This is the weirdest thing. They're not indentations, they're actually raised sections that lift up. So I would say the molding aspect of it is probable. So making a copper reproduction is quite easy, and this is what happened with the public. Some of them have put them online, and those that have gone online, I've used them as references, and for the sake of interest in showing people what's on them, I've managed to get at least 9 or 10 of them, just single print, close detail image where you can see finer detail. And I think in the interest of letting people see them rather than cover them up, that's what I'm doing. And it's a bit of a risk, but I've thanked all the people involved and used them as a reference and sharpened up the images. It's important to adjust the contrast slightly and sharpen some of the images to see the detail.
That's right, because they're heavily oxidized, beginning to kind of rust in a way, so it's somewhat difficult to see, but you managed to do a good job, and on your page you do have quite a bit of what you found, obviously, but again, you don't know how much more actually is out there and what's on those plates, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's about 70 of these books, there's a wealth of information to go through, so we'll be lucky to see even a fraction of that.
So tell us what you found on the planes currently and how you tie it together with your work, obviously, Wayne.
Sure, I'd like to refer to the images on that page on my website, thehiddenrecords.com. Just click the Metal Books image, the montage of all the images, and that'll take you to the detail. I want to start with the most important one that seems to be a single credit card size plate on its own. Now, the plates that are on their own with lots of detail, to me, have the highest value of something secret. I think it was probably an early secret society of these people that maybe even started off the Templars, who can say? but on a single metal plate that's as small as a credit card that you can keep on your person and hide it, bury it somewhere, and you can dig it up another time. It's quite an amazing little bit of information that is durable. And the first one, the Daily News covered the story on this image. So it's the first image where it shows a menorah and 7 stars on it on my website, just underneath the animation of the stars that I believe are depicted. It's showing Orion to the Pleiades and that whole area of Taurus and Orion. And with 7 stars above the menorah, it's showing something that I proposed a few years ago, that the menorah in the Revelations book, the 7 candlesticks, the 7 golden candlesticks, are representation of the Pleiades. It's probably the easiest thing to do in the early days when people illuminated their homes with candles, to put a little grouping of 7, like the 7 celestial lights that they're celebrating on a beautiful candle with some of these copper ones. And while we're speaking of those copper ones, there are about 4 of them that are really big and have such different things on them. And those, I think, are total fabrications. Whereas one of them that I've got on my webpage, you see the only copper one, you can see there's a misprint where they've made a template and they actually slipped with the print. So they hammered it out. And I'm showing it because it's got detail that we need to show the public. That's the whole problem with these books. They're not showing anybody anything. They're locked up in 3 different places in the world, and are they ever going to release them?
Who has them at this point, then, Wayne?
I think most of these collection of metal books are in the Jordanian University. They seem to have at least 60 of them. There are some others scattered around. There are a few other tests going on at the moment. The Royal Scientific Society is dealing with it in the US, and they are doing tests on it. There's a Mexican university as well, and I don't know how the University of Mexico's results are coming. It's the Getty Conservation Institute, and the Sheffield University is another one that's also doing tests. And so far, all those tests are showing an age of beyond 1,500 years old to up to 1,800 years old. And that's using, I believe, a lead dating technique.
Very, very interesting. How many books are there in total, do we know? And how many plates or pages do they, is in there?
Yeah, the average book varies from about 5 or 6 pages to single, just one, look like credit card size pieces that have really amazing information on. And then some of the bigger ones that are almost like book size, like a normal novel size. And that one, I've seen a couple around about 10, 15 pages of metal sheets, and they're all sealed with these binders with metal ringed insertions that have all oxidized in place, that will be damaged if they open them. So when they open them one day, it is going to be obviously in the hands of a professional, because it might damage them completely.
So in your estimate, how many plates or pages of these books have you seen so far, and have you gotten these images primarily from the web, or where do you go to find these?
Yeah, now this is the thing. It's an internet search. It was a heck of a difficulty trying to get the details from the people that had them to start with. They're not in contact